Part 3, Chapter 18 of the Manxman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tony Ashworth. The Manxman by Sir Caine. Part 3, Chapter 18. The next day was Saturday. Kate remembered that Philip came to Ballure on Saturdays. She felt sure that he would come to Sulby also. Let him only set eyes on her, and he would divine the trouble that had taken the colour out of her cheeks. Then he would speak to Pete and to her father. He would deliver her. He would take everything upon himself. Thus all day long, like a white-eyed gambler who has staked his last, she waited and listened and watched. At breakfast she said to herself, "He will come this morning." At dinner, "He will come this evening." At supper, "He will come tonight." But Philip did not come, and she grew hysterical as well as restless. She watched the clock. The minutes passed with feet of lead, but the hours with wings of fire. She was now like a criminal looking for a reprieve. Every time the clock warned to strike, she felt 1 hour nearer her doom. The strain was wearing her out. She reproached Philip for leaving her to this cruel uncertainty, and she suffered the pangs of one who tries at the same time to love and to hate. Then she reproached herself with altering the date of the marriage, and excused Philip on the grounds of her haste. She felt like a witch who was burning by her own spell. Hope was failing her, and will was breaking down as well. Nevertheless, she determined that the wedding should be postponed. That was on Saturday night. On Sunday morning she had gone one step farther. The last pitiful shred of expectation that Philip would intervene seemed then to be lost, and she had resolved that, come what would, she should not marry at all. No need to appeal to Pete, no necessity to betray the secret of Philip. All she had to do was to say she would not go on with the wedding, and no power on earth should compel her. With this determination and a feeling of immense relief she went downstairs. Cæsar was coming in from the preaching room, and Pete from the new house at Ramsey. They sat down to dinner. After dinner she would speak out. Cæsar sharpened the carving knife on the steel and said, "We've taken the girl Christian Killip back to communion today." "Poor thing," said Grannie. "Pity she was ever put out of it, though." Maybe so," said Cæsar. "Necessary, anyway. One scabby sheep infects the flock." "And has marriage daubed grace on the poor sheep's sore, then, Cæsar?" said Pete. "She's Mistress Robbie Tear, and a dacent woman, sir," said Cæsar, digging into the beef, "and that's all the truck a Christian church has got with it." Kate did not eat her dinner that day, and neither did she speak out as she had intended. A supernatural power seemed to have come down at the last moment and barred up the one remaining pathway of escape. She was in the track of the storm. The tempest was ready to fall on her. Where could she fly for shelter? What her father had said of the girl had revealed her life to her in the light of her relation to Philip. The thought of the possible contingency which she had foreseen with so much joy, as so much power, had awakened the consciousness of her moral position. She was a fallen woman. What else was she? And if the contingency befell, what would become of her? In the intensity of her father's pietistic views, the very shadow of shame would overwhelm his household, overthrow his sect, and uproot his religious pretensions. Kate trembled at the possibility of such a disaster coming through her. She saw herself being driven from house and home. Where could she fly? And though she fled away, would she not still be the cause of sorrow and disgrace to all whom she left behind, her mother, her father, Pete, everybody? If she could only tear out the past, at least she could stop this marriage. Or if she had been a man she could stop it, for a man may sin and still look to the future with a firm face. But she was a woman, and a woman's acts may be her own, but their consequences are beyond her. Oh, the misery of being a woman! She asked herself what she could do, and there was no answer. She could not break the web of circumstances. Her situation might be false, it might be dishonourable, but there was no escape from it. There was no gleam of hope anywhere. Late that night, Sunday night, they were sitting together in the kitchen, Kate in the fire seat as usual, Pete on the stool by the turf closet, smoking up the chimney, Cæsar reading aloud, Granny listening and Nancy cooking the supper, when the porch door burst open and somebody entered. Kate rose to her feet with a startled cry of joy, looked round eagerly, and then sat down again covered with confusion. It was the girl Christian Killip, a pale, weak, frightened creature, with the mouth and eyes of a hare. "Is Mr. Quilliam here?" she asked. "Here's the man himself, Christian," said Granny. "What do you want with him?" "Oh, God bless you, sir," said the girl to Pete. "God bless you for ever and ever." Then, turning back to Granny, she explained in woman's fashion, with many words, that somebody unknown had sent her £20 for the child by post the day before, and she had only now guessed who it must be when John the clerk had told her what Pete had said a week before. Pete grunted and glimed, smoked up the chimney, and said, "That'll do, ma'am, that'll do. Don't believe all you hear. John says more than his amens, anyway." "I'm axing your pardon, miss," said the girl to Kate, "but I couldn't help coming. I couldn't really. No, I couldn't." And then she began to cry. "Where's that child?" said Pete, heaving up to his feet with a ferocious look. "What, you mane to say you've left the lil thing alone asleep? Go back to it then immajent. Good night." "Good night, sir, and God bless you. And when you're married tomorrow, God bless your wife as well." That'll do," said Pete, backing her to the porch. "You desarve a good woman, sir, and may the Lord be good to you both." "Tut, tut," said Pete, and he tut-tutted her out of the house. She smoothed her baby's hair more tenderly than ever that night, and kissed it again and again. Kate could scarcely breathe, she could barely see. Her pride and her will had broken down utterly. This great-hearted man loved her. He would lay down his life, if need be, to save her. Tomorrow he would marry her. Here, then, was her rock of refuge, this strong man by her side. She could struggle against fate no longer. Its invisible hand was pushing her on. Its blind power was dragging her. If Philip would not come to claim her, she must marry Pete. And Pete? She meant no harm to Pete. She had not yet thought of things from Pete's point of view. He was like the camel bag in the desert to the terrified wayfarer when the sand cloud breaks over him. He flies to it. It shelters him. But what of the camel itself, with its head in the storm? Until the storm is over, he does not think of that. End of Part 3, Chapter 18.